A little girl vanished without a trace in 1990, leaving behind a community shattered by loss. But 33 years later, her favorite doll turns up in the most unexpected place, unraveling secrets that no one saw coming. Before we dive into this unforgettable story, please let me know where you're watching from and share your thoughts in the comments below. It was a sweltering afternoon in July of 1990 when the sun poured through the ancient oak trees surrounding the quiet little town of Willamette Falls, Oregon, a place where rooftops lay low under the sky and life moved slowly, like the gentle river winding behind the hills. Children pedaled their bikes along cracked asphalt roads that radiated heat, adults watered front lawns, and the soft chime of wind bells tinkled from porch eaves, composing a familiar summer lullaby that wrapped the town in the illusion of timeless peace. Sitting on the grass beneath the dappled shade of an old maple tree just outside her family's porch, 6-year-old Emily Brandt, with her tousled curls of golden hair and eyes the soft blue of a mountain lake, was whispering stories to her beloved rag doll, Daisy. Daisy wasn't new, nor was she expensive. She was a worn and faded cloth doll, missing one button eye and bearing a heart-shaped pink patch sewn on her shoulder. A tender repair made by Emily's mother the day the stitching came undone. Emily called it the healing heart, and she firmly believed that as long as Daisy had it, nothing bad could ever happen to her. Inside the house, Claire Brandt was wiping her hands on a cotton apron after slicing apples for one of her famous weekend pies, when the telephone rang, its sharp metallic tone cutting through the calm. She hesitated only briefly before stepping away to answer. It was a long-distance call from her sister in California, something urgent about their aging aunt's declining health. Claire glanced out the kitchen window before picking up the receiver, reassured to see Emily still seated outside, lost in quiet conversation with her doll. She told herself it would only take a few minutes. But in those few minutes, the world Claire knew would crack and collapse in a way that would never fully mend. When Claire returned to the porch, the yard was empty. The shade still danced across the grass. The air still buzzed faintly with cicadas, but the small figure of her daughter was gone. So was Daisy. For a moment, Claire stood frozen, the breeze gently brushing her hair, and then her heart clenched as she called out Emily's name, softly at first, then louder, and then screaming with a rising panic that drew neighbors from their homes. People spilled out onto the street, combing the bushes, checking under porches, peering behind cars. The police arrived within minutes. Dogs were brought in. A helicopter circled overhead. Search parties fanned out into the woods with flashlights, calling her name well into the night. But Emily had vanished. No trace, no scream, no goodbye, as if the air itself had swallowed her whole. The only signs left behind were a faint footprint in the soft earth near the fence and a blue ribbon tangled in the thorny branches of the plum tree, the same ribbon Emily used to tie Daisy's hair. The days that followed bled into one another like ink in water. The town, once so full of life, felt stilled under the weight of something unspoken. Newspapers printed her picture with bold headlines pleading for help. Claire no longer ate or slept, surviving on cold coffee and a hope that wore thinner with each passing hour. Dozens were questioned, including a homeless man who had recently been seen camping in the woods nearby, but nothing solid came of it. One neighbor vaguely remembered a white van parked at the end of the block around the time Emily went missing, but no one had caught the license plate. Every lead turned cold. The first week passed, and then the second. Emily's empty room remained untouched. Her toothbrush still sat by the sink, her pajamas still folded on the bed. And in the silence of the home, Mark, Claire's husband, grew quieter and more withdrawn. The once warm and bustling house felt more like a mausoleum of echoes and memories that refused to fade. And through it all, Daisy, the soft, stitched companion of so many bedtime stories and whispered secrets, never turned up. For Claire, that absence cut the deepest. If someone had taken Emily, she reasoned, surely they would have left the ragged little doll behind. But Daisy was gone too. It felt deliberate, cruel, like the kidnapper had taken the last thread of her daughter's presence with them. The only thing she might have held at night, inhaled for traces of Emily's scent, touched to feel a piece of her still near. For months later, the case was officially classified as inactive due to insufficient evidence. The search slowed. The flyers faded and curled on telephone poles. The volunteers stopped coming. But Claire never gave up. Every birthday, she baked a cake, lit candles, and made the same wish before blowing them out. One wish, whispered with closed eyes and aching hands. Come home. And the years passed. The headlines faded. Life tiptoed forward in the town, though never quite the same. The Brandt house remained, shuttered and quiet, and Claire, now silver-haired and leaner, carried the weight of absence in her bones. She kept Emily's room just as it was, refusing to believe it was over. And then, in the autumn of 2023, the phone rang again. Claire, now 66, picked it up with that familiar sinking in her stomach. But this time, it wasn't a relative or a well-meaning stranger. It was a man's voice, hesitant, unfamiliar, but certain, saying softly, "Are you Claire Brandt? I think I just found Daisy." The voice on the other end of the line was unfamiliar, tentative, but steady, carrying a weight Claire had not felt in decades. "Are you Claire Brandt?" the man asked. Claire's throat tightened, a tremor of hope and fear twisting inside her chest. "Yes," she whispered, clutching the receiver as if it were a lifeline. "Who is this?" The man hesitated, then explained that he was a maintenance worker at the Old Willow Creek nursing home, a place abandoned and forgotten on the edge of town. While clearing out the basement for renovations, he had stumbled upon something that didn't seem to belong. A rag doll, worn and faded, with a pink heart sewn on its shoulder. He thought it looked familiar and, after some searching, found an old missing person poster of a little girl named Emily Brandt. The doll, he believed, was the same Daisy. For Claire, hearing those words was like a jolt to her very soul. The years of silence, the endless nights spent wondering, suddenly erupted in a flood of memories. The way Emily's laughter had once filled these very rooms, the feel of her small hand in Claire's, the warmth of a hug that had vanished without warning. "Where exactly did you find her?" Claire asked, her voice breaking. The man described the dusty, spider-webbed basement, stacked with forgotten belongings, moth-eaten furniture, boxes of medical records, old wheelchairs left to rust. It was a place no child should ever have been. Yet somehow Daisy had ended up there. The news traveled fast. Within hours, reporters swarmed the neighborhood, cameras flashing, microphones thrust toward Claire's trembling face. But Claire knew this was not the end of the story. It was just the beginning of a search far more complicated than before. For years, the case had lain cold, but the discovery of Daisy raised more questions than answers. How did the doll get to the nursing home? Was Emily ever there? Had someone been hiding the truth all along? Claire visited the old building herself the next day. The nursing home was a crumbling relic, its windows boarded, walls cracked, and the air thick with the smell of mildew and neglect. Inside, the basement was dark and musty. She ran her fingers over the rag doll's faded fabric, tracing the heart-shaped patch her own hands had once sewn. The familiarity of Daisy in her grasp was overwhelming, a symbol of innocence stolen and a past that refused to let go. Memories surged. Emily's bright smile, the feel of her curls slipping through Claire's fingers, the laughter echoing in the summer air before it all stopped. Investigators were called in to comb through the nursing home's archives and interview former employees. Some old-timers recalled strange happenings. A child wandering the halls years ago, strange noises in the night, unexplained disappearances of supplies. Others said the building was haunted by sadness. But the records were incomplete. Many files lost to time or destroyed. No clear trail emerged. Still, every shred of evidence was combed over with the desperation of a family still holding on. For Claire, the discovery of Daisy rekindled a painful but vital hope. She began to piece together old memories, comparing faded photographs, journals, and news clippings she had kept for decades. Friends who had drifted away now reconnected, sharing stories they had never dared voice before. The community, too, was stirred from its quiet resignation. Neighbors who once accepted the loss as final now found themselves drawn back into a shared quest for truth. Nights grew long again, with Claire poring over details, chasing every lead. Sleep was a stranger, replaced by the sharp sting of memories and the ache of uncertainty. But amid the heartache, there was a fragile thread of hope. Daisy, once lost, had returned. And with her, the possibility that Emily might still be out there, somewhere, waiting to be found. The days after the discovery of Daisy felt like stepping into a dream Claire couldn't quite grasp, as if the past was reaching out from the shadows, demanding to be seen again. The nursing home's basement, where the doll had lain hidden for so many years, became the focal point of renewed investigation. Officials pried open locked filing cabinets and uncovered rusted medical charts, fragments of stories left unfinished, names scrawled in fading ink, and records of patients long forgotten by the town. Among these remnants, Claire found a faded visitor log, a brittle book filled with signatures and dates that stretched back decades. It was there she spotted a name she never expected, David Mills, signed on a day just weeks before Emily disappeared in 1990. The name stirred something deep in Claire's heart, but she had no idea who he was or what his connection to her daughter might be. Determined to follow this new lead, Claire began her search for David Mills. Friends and family warned her gently that digging into the past could reopen wounds best left to heal, but she pressed on, driven by the unyielding belief that answers lay hidden beneath layers of silence. She visited the local library and pored over microfilm archives of old newspapers, scanning for any mention of Mills. What she found was unsettling. A man who had worked at the nursing home during the late 1980s and early 90s, known to be quiet and reclusive, but with a murky history that hinted at trouble. A 1988 article mentioned a complaint against him by a former patient's family, but the case had been dismissed for lack of evidence. No one seemed to know where he had gone since the nursing home closed its doors. As Claire delved deeper, she uncovered whispers from former employees who had moved away or retired. Some spoke of David Mills as someone who kept to himself, often seen wandering the empty halls late at night, but others avoided his name altogether, eyes darting nervously or changing the subject quickly. One former nurse recalled a strange incident where a child had been spotted in the building after hours, though no record of the child existed in official files. The nurse's voice had faltered as she described the unease she'd felt that night. These stories, fragile and fragmented, began to piece together a chilling narrative, one that painted a portrait of secrets hidden behind the walls of the abandoned nursing home. Meanwhile, Claire's own life became consumed by the search. She grew thinner, her once bright eyes shadowed by sleepless nights and mounting worry. But she refused to let despair take hold. She arranged meetings with law enforcement and private investigators, sharing every detail she had gathered. The police reopened the case, cautiously hopeful that the discovery of Daisy and the connection to David Mills might finally crack the decades-old mystery. Claire accompanied the investigators back to the nursing home basement, retracing the steps where the doll had been found, hoping for any sign of Emily. Her home, too, remained a shrine to her lost daughter. The room where Emily had once played was untouched, a silent testament to a life frozen in time. Among the toys and drawings, Claire found comfort in the familiar scent of lavender from an old blanket Emily had cherished. She clung to these fragments of the past as if they were lifelines, reminders that her daughter had once been here, had once laughed and dreamed. Every night, Claire held Daisy close, her fingers tracing the soft fabric, seeking solace in the little doll that had survived the silence. But the more she uncovered, the clearer it became that the answers she sought might be darker than she imagined. David Mills, the nursing home's former employee, remained elusive, his whereabouts unknown. The building itself, once a place of care, seemed to hold its breath in quiet menace, the weight of forgotten stories pressing down like dust on every surface. Claire knew that finding Emily would mean unraveling these shadows, no matter how painful the truth might be. Then a breakthrough came unexpectedly. a retired janitor named Frank Carlson, who had worked at the nursing home during that era, contacted Claire. His voice was rough but steady as he recounted memories that sent chills through her heart. Frank spoke of a hidden storage room beneath the basement, sealed off and long forgotten, where items from the home's past were dumped during its final closure. He recalled overhearing hushed conversations about the mysterious disappearance of a child from the area, though no one ever linked it to the nursing home directly. It was a place people tried to forget, Frank said quietly. But maybe it's time it stopped being forgotten. With Frank's guidance, Claire and investigators gained access to the sealed room. Inside, they found boxes filled with patient belongings, discarded medical supplies, and, among them, something else, clothing that looked too small to belong to an adult, a faded photograph of a little girl holding a doll that looked very much like Daisy. The photograph, yellowed with age, was a haunting echo from the past, stirring a swirl of hope and dread in Claire's heart. Could it be Emily? Was this the missing link that would finally bring her daughter home? That night, Claire sat alone in her daughter's room, the photograph clutched tightly in her hand. The weight of so many years pressed down on her, yet the faint glow of hope flickered stubbornly within. The puzzle was far from complete, but at last a piece had been found, a piece that might lead her through the darkness toward the light of truth. Claire's world had narrowed to the faint glow of that photograph, its edges frayed but its image clear. A small girl clutching a doll, the same ragged Daisy she now held so dearly. The weight of the past pressed on her, but with it came a fragile hope that this faded picture could unlock secrets buried in the shadows of the nursing home. Yet, the truth remained elusive, as if the building itself was guarding what had been lost all those years ago. In the days that followed, Claire found unexpected allies in the most unlikely places. Among them was Helen Turner, a retired social worker who had served in the community during the late 1980s. Helen had never forgotten Emily's case and had long harbored a quiet suspicion that something about the nursing home's closure had been more than mere misfortune. When Claire reached out to her, Helen's voice softened with a mixture of empathy and urgency. There were whispers, she said, things that were never put into official reports. Children seen near the home after hours, strange comings and goings that nobody explained. Helen offered to help Claire sift through social service records and to contact other retired colleagues who might hold pieces of the puzzle. Together, they uncovered reports of several children who had been placed temporarily in foster care or group homes after the nursing home shut down. One name surfaced repeatedly, a boy named Tommy, who had been moved multiple times and whose trail vanished abruptly around the same time Emily disappeared. Helen's eyes glistened as she spoke of Tommy's file, marked by uncertainty, neglect, and hints of abuse. If only we had looked closer then, she murmured. For Claire, Tommy's story became entwined with her own daughter's disappearance, a haunting reminder that many lives had been broken in silence. Meanwhile, the investigation into David Mills deepened. Private detectives traced his last known address to a small town several hours away, where neighbors remembered a man living quietly, never speaking much about his past. Attempts to locate Mills were met with dead ends until a breakthrough came in the form of a letter left at a local church, addressed to Claire. The letter was brief but chilling. "I know where she is," it read, "but some truths come with a price." No signature, no contact details, only a warning wrapped in shadows. Claire's heart pounded with a mix of fear and determination. The road ahead was uncertain, but the thought that Mills might hold the key to finding Emily drove her onward. She worked closely with law enforcement, coordinating searches and reviewing old case files. Every night, the doll Daisy sat beside her bed, a silent witness to the mother's relentless hope and growing desperation. As weeks passed, a new lead emerged from the nursing home's former employees. An elderly woman named Margaret, once a caretaker there, contacted Claire with trembling hands and a voice heavy with regret. She confessed to witnessing strange behavior from David Mills, late-night visits to restricted areas, unexplained conversations on the phone, and a fear that something terrible had happened within those walls. Margaret's confession sent ripples through the investigation, prompting a fresh look at the nursing home's dark corners and the secrets they might still hide. Together, Claire, Helen, and investigators began piecing together a timeline. One that suggested Emily had been taken to the nursing home's basement, perhaps kept hidden in the sealed storage room, before the building was abandoned. The thought was unbearable, yet it gave Claire a sliver of clarity amid the fog of uncertainty. If Emily had been there, was she still alive? And if not, what had become of her? One rainy afternoon, as Claire sifted through old photographs and letters in her quiet living room, a sudden knock at the door startled her. Standing there was a young woman, eyes bright but shadowed with years of unanswered questions. She introduced herself as Sarah, a woman who had grown up in the town and had recently discovered her own tangled connection to the nursing home. Sarah handed Claire a small, worn notebook, her mother's diary, filled with cryptic entries about children who had vanished and strange sounds in the night. Among the pages was a drawing of a doll, unmistakably Daisy, with a note, "Keep her safe. She holds the key." The diary added a new layer to the mystery, a thread that seemed to connect past and present, hope and despair. Claire realized that the search for Emily was no longer just her own. It was a shared journey with others who refused to let the darkness swallow their memories. Together, they would uncover the truth, no matter how deep the shadows ran. That night, as the rain tapped softly against the windows, Claire held Daisy close and whispered a promise to her daughter. Wherever she was, she would be found, and the truth would finally be brought to light. Claire's life had been consumed by the relentless pursuit of a truth that seemed always just beyond reach. Yet with every new discovery, the tangled threads of Emily's disappearance began to untwist, revealing shadows that stretched far deeper than she had ever imagined. The nursing home's secrets were not merely relics of a forgotten past. They were echoes of lives broken, of silence forced upon those who dared to speak. Sarah's mother's diary became a beacon in the dark, its fragile pages whispering forgotten tales. Each entry spoke of children who vanished without explanation, of eerie sounds echoing through empty halls, and of a fear that gripped the staff like a cold hand. There was a recurring mention of a hidden room, one that no one was supposed to enter, a place where the vulnerable had been locked away, their cries muffled by thick walls and decades of neglect. The diary hinted that David Mills had been involved, but the full extent of his actions remained shrouded. Driven by these revelations, Claire and Helen arranged to meet with former employees of the nursing home, hoping to piece together a clearer picture. The meetings were difficult, the memories painful, and sometimes contradictory. Some recalled seeing children wandering the halls late at night, while others remembered sudden staff departures and whispered rumors of misconduct. A retired nurse named Ellen shared a chilling story of finding Daisy, the very same doll Claire had cherished, hidden beneath a floorboard, as if someone had tried to erase all traces of a child's presence. The revelation sent a shiver through Claire's spine. The doll was not just a toy, but a silent witness to what had transpired. Meanwhile, the letter from David Mills weighed heavily on Claire's mind. It had promised answers, but at a price she was yet to understand. Through painstaking detective work, authorities traced the letter to a remote cabin on the outskirts of the county. When Claire visited the site, the air was thick with silence and decay. The cabin stood abandoned, its windows boarded and the door hanging ajar. Inside, she found signs of recent habitation, a worn blanket, scattered papers, and a small box containing photographs of children, including one of Emily, smiling in happier times. Among the papers was a confession, scrawled hastily. "I kept her safe, away from those who would harm. I am sorry for the years lost." The confession was a cruel balm, offering hope entwined with guilt. Claire felt a surge of conflicting emotions, relief that Emily might still be alive, sorrow for the years stolen, and anger toward the man who had held her captive in silence. But there was no sign of Mills himself, only traces of his remorse left behind in that lonely cabin. Back in town, Claire's support network grew stronger. Neighbors, once distant, now rallied around her, sharing stories and old photographs. filling in pieces of the community's fractured history. They spoke of a stormy night in 1990 when the nursing home had closed abruptly, and many feared that the facility's dark secrets had been buried along with its walls. A local historian offered access to restricted archives, revealing building plans that confirmed the existence of a hidden basement chamber, sealed off after the closure. The evidence mounted, pointing to a deliberate effort to hide something terrible. As Claire stood once more in Emily's room, clutching Daisy tightly, she felt the weight of a mother's love burning fiercely within her. The path ahead was uncertain, but she was no longer alone in the fight. The shadows of the past were beginning to unravel, revealing a story of survival, sacrifice, and a mother's unyielding hope. Somewhere beyond the silence and the years, Emily's voice awaited to be heard again. The days blurred into weeks as Claire found herself entangled in a web of memories, clues, and the fragile hope that her daughter might still be out there somewhere. The nursing home, once a mere shadow in her mind, now loomed large as a place of unspeakable secrets and untold pain. Yet, in the midst of this uncertainty, a single beacon pierced through the darkness. An old tape recorder discovered in the attic of her childhood home during a visit to sort through her parents' belongings. The tape recorder was dusty and worn, a relic from decades past, but it still functioned. Curious, Claire pressed play, holding her breath as a crackling voice filled the quiet room. It was Emily's voice, soft, trembling, yet unmistakably hers. The recording was brief, a message left long ago, buried beneath layers of time. "Mom, I'm scared. Please find me. They keep me locked. But I'm here. I'm waiting." The words hit Claire like a tidal wave, shattering the fragile calm she had maintained. Tears streamed down her face as the voice of her daughter echoed through the room, a haunting reminder that the past was not gone. It was alive, waiting to be unraveled. The message was a lifeline, a testament to Emily's strength and survival against all odds. Determined to follow this new lead, Claire returned to the nursing home's remains, now nothing more than a crumbling shell swallowed by nature. The basement chamber, long sealed and forgotten, became the focus of a renewed search effort. With the help of local authorities and volunteers, the heavy door was pried open, revealing a dark, cold space filled with dust and echoes of despair. Among the debris lay remnants of toys, blankets, and a small wooden box containing more pieces of Emily's past. A faded photograph, a lock of hair tied with a ribbon, and a handwritten note scrawled with a child's shaky handwriting. "I'm still here." The discovery sent ripples through the community. News spread quickly, drawing attention from journalists, investigators, and those who had long mourned the children who vanished without a trace. Claire's story became a symbol of hope and resilience, inspiring others to come forward with their own memories and suspicions. But the path to the truth was fraught with danger. As Claire dug deeper, she encountered resistance, from those who wanted the past to remain buried, from old friends turned silent, and from shadows that whispered threats in the night. The same darkness that had stolen Emily years ago now seemed to close in around Claire, a reminder that some secrets were guarded fiercely. Yet, Claire's resolve never wavered. Holding Daisy close, she vowed to bring her daughter home, to restore the light stolen from their lives. The message on the tape recorder was more than a cry for help. It was a promise that no matter how long it took, no matter how deep the darkness, love would prevail. The months that followed the discovery of the tape recorder became a whirlwind of emotions and revelations for Claire. The fragile hope sparked by Emily's recorded voice had ignited a fire within the community, pulling together a network of people united by a shared desire to uncover the truth. New leads emerged, and Claire found herself at the center of a story far larger than she had ever imagined, one of courage, resilience, and the enduring power of a mother's love. One evening, as the sun dipped low and cast long shadows across the small town, Claire received a call that would change everything. The voice on the other end was tentative but unmistakable, laced with years of uncertainty and disbelief. "Claire, it's me. Emily. Time seemed to freeze as the words sank in. After more than 3 decades of silence, the daughter she thought she had lost forever was reaching out from the depths of the unknown. The reunion was bittersweet. Emily's story was one of survival against unimaginable odds. After being hidden away in that basement room, she had been moved from place to place, foster homes, distant relatives, even far-flung states. Each move brought new challenges, but also moments of kindness that sustained her spirit. She had struggled with the weight of her past, the loss of her family, and the yearning for a life stolen too soon. But through it all, the memory of her mother's love had never faded. When they finally met face to face, the years melted away in tears and embraces. Emily, now a woman shaped by both pain and perseverance, clung to Daisy, the doll that had traveled with her through the darkest nights. Claire's heart swelled with a mixture of relief and sorrow, knowing the road to healing would be long, but no longer walked alone. Together, they began to unravel the layers of the past, sharing stories, confronting ghosts, and piecing together the fractured history that had kept them apart. Emily spoke of David Mills, the man who had hidden her away, and the fear that had silenced her cries. She described the small acts of kindness from strangers who had become her lifelines, and the strength she had drawn from the memory of home. The community rallied around them, offering support and listening with open hearts. The nursing home's dark legacy was finally coming to light, exposing the failures and injustices that had allowed such a tragedy to unfold. Investigations reopened, and the search for others who might have been affected intensified. Claire and Emily's story became a beacon of hope for those still searching, a reminder that even in the darkest corners, love and truth could shine through. As they stood together one crisp autumn evening, watching the sun set over the familiar landscape of their hometown, Claire felt a peace she had long thought impossible. The journey had been harrowing, filled with pain and uncertainty, but it brought her daughter back. And with Emily home, the shadows of the past began to recede, replaced by the promise of a new beginning. The reunion between Claire and Emily marked the beginning of a new chapter, but it was one filled with complex emotions that neither of them could have fully prepared for. After 33 years of separation, the journey toward healing was slow and fragile. The joy of rediscovery was often shadowed by the painful echoes of lost time, stolen childhoods, and the deep scars left by years of silence. Yet through it all, there was an unbreakable bond that neither distance nor darkness could sever. Emily found herself navigating a world that had changed in countless ways, a world that once belonged to a little girl, but now felt unfamiliar and daunting. Memories flooded back, some joyous, others terrifying, but the most profound realization was that she was not alone anymore. Claire, whose every heartbeat had long been a prayer for her daughter's safety, stood steadfast, offering love and patience beyond measure. They spent hours sharing stories, tears, and laughter, slowly stitching together the fabric of their fractured family. Counseling became a cornerstone of their healing process. The years of trauma Emily endured had left invisible wounds that needed gentle care. Therapists specialized in childhood trauma and reunion grief helped guide them through the difficult conversations, illuminating paths toward forgiveness and understanding. Claire learned to listen not just with her ears, but with her heart, while Emily discovered strength in vulnerability and trust in the presence of her mother's unwavering support. The community, once wary and distant, now embraced Emily as one of their own. Town gatherings, local support groups, and neighbors' gestures of kindness helped bridge the gap between the past and the present. The discovery of the nursing home's hidden basement and the revelations about David Mills had shaken the town to its core, but also inspired a collective determination to prevent such tragedies from happening again. Memorials were held for those who had been lost or forgotten, and conversations about accountability and healing grew louder and more urgent. Amid this renewal, Claire and Emily found solace in everyday moments. The simple pleasure of sharing a meal, the comfort of long walks through the familiar streets, and the joy of rediscovering family traditions left dormant for decades. Daisy, the worn doll with its faded dress and gentle smile, remained a treasured symbol of resilience and hope, reminding them both of the journey they had survived and the future they were determined to build. Yet, even as the wounds began to heal, shadows lingered. Questions about David Mills and his accomplices remained unanswered, and the search for others who might have suffered alongside Emily continued. Claire became an advocate for child protection, using her story to raise awareness and inspire change. Emily, empowered by her own survival, joined her mother's efforts, determined to transform pain into purpose. Their path was far from easy, marked by moments of doubt, fear, and grief. But through the steadfast power of love and the strength found in community, Claire and Emily moved forward, together, unbroken and hopeful. The story that began with loss now blossomed into one of healing, courage, and the enduring light that can emerge from the darkest of nights. As the seasons shifted and time passed, Claire and Emily found themselves drawn deeper into the shadows of a past that refused to remain buried. The revelations about the nursing home and David Mills had opened a Pandora's box, and the once quiet town was now a crucible of whispered confessions and long-suppressed memories. For Claire, every discovery was a double-edged sword. Each truth unearthed brought her closer to understanding, but also deeper into pain. One afternoon, a weathered envelope arrived at Claire's doorstep, its edges frayed and stained by age. Inside, she found a collection of letters and photographs, sent anonymously but clearly connected to the dark history she sought to expose. The letters spoke of a secret network, a chain of silence among those who had witnessed but never spoken out, staff members at the nursing home, local officials, and even some community leaders. These documents painted a chilling portrait of complicity, a system that allowed cruelty to fester unchecked. Among the photographs was an image of a young girl who bore a striking resemblance to Emily, standing beside a woman whose eyes held a sorrowful knowledge. The caption simply read, "They knew. They let it happen." The words echoed in Claire's mind, stirring a storm of anger and resolve. She realized that Emily's case was not an isolated tragedy, but part of a wider, more sinister pattern that demanded justice. With renewed determination, Claire enlisted the help of investigative journalists and legal experts. Together, they began to unravel the threads of cover-ups and corruption that had shielded the perpetrators for decades. The process was grueling, filled with dead ends, threats, and moments when the weight of the past threatened to crush their spirits. Yet, every breakthrough fueled their commitment to bring the truth into the light. Emily, now a pillar of strength, stood by her mother's side through it all. Her presence was a living testament to survival and resilience. She shared her story openly, breaking the silence that had once imprisoned her and inspiring others who had suffered in silence to come forward. The community, once silent and complicit, was forced to confront its own shadows and reckon with the painful legacy left behind. As public pressure mounted, official investigations reopened, and calls for accountability grew louder. Claire and Emily attended hearings, spoke at rallies, and met with lawmakers, advocating for reforms to protect vulnerable children and ensure such horrors could never be repeated. Their journey from despair to activism became a beacon of hope and a catalyst for change. But amidst the fight for justice, the personal toll was profound. The scars of betrayal and loss ran deep, and moments of vulnerability reminded them that healing was not a straight path. Yet, through the unwavering bond of mother and daughter and the support of a community awakened, they faced the future with courage. In the quiet moments, when the world faded away, Claire and Emily would sit together, holding Daisy, the little doll that had witnessed their entire journey. It was a symbol not only of a missing child, but of a family reunited against all odds, and of the enduring light that can emerge even from the darkest past. The relentless pursuit of justice brought Claire and Emily face to face with realities more harrowing than either had anticipated. Each revelation about the nursing home's dark past tore at the fabric of their lives, unraveling layers of trust and shaking the foundations of their community. The weight of long-buried secrets was heavy, and the cost of uncovering them exacted a toll, both emotional and physical. Public hearings were fraught with tension. Witnesses who once clung to silence began to testify, some with trembling voices, others with bitter resolve. They recounted a litany of abuses, neglect, and systematic cover-ups that stretched beyond the confines of the nursing home. The name David Mills surfaced repeatedly, a shadow looming large over the testimonies. His presence in the courtroom, or rather his absence, was a haunting void, a man who had vanished like a ghost, yet whose actions had left indelible scars. Claire found herself reliving every nightmare, every unanswered question that had haunted her since Emily's disappearance. The emotional strain was relentless. Nights were sleepless, haunted by memories of lost years and the faces of other children who might never find their way home. Emily, too, grappled with the resurgence of trauma, the reopening of wounds that had only recently begun to heal. Yet, amidst the darkness, moments of profound strength emerged. Emily's testimony was powerful, her voice steady despite the flood of painful memories. She spoke not just for herself, but for the voiceless, the forgotten, and those still trapped in shadows. Her courage inspired others to come forward, turning isolated stories into a collective outcry that could no longer be ignored. The community's response was mixed. While many rallied behind Claire and Emily, demanding accountability and reform, others recoiled in denial or fear. Accusations flew, and old alliances fractured as the town grappled with its complicity. For some, the past was easier left buried. For others, confronting it was the only path to healing. Claire and Emily leaned heavily on one another during these turbulent times. Their bond, forged in pain and hope, became an unbreakable lifeline. They found solace in small rituals, morning coffee shared in quiet reflection, walks through the park where Emily had once played, and the steady presence of Daisy, the doll that had survived alongside them both. The legal battles dragged on, exhausting resources and testing their resolve. But progress was made. Investigations uncovered new evidence, and a handful of those responsible faced charges. The process was slow and imperfect, but it marked a significant step toward justice and recognition. Through it all, Claire never lost sight of the ultimate goal: to ensure no other child would endure what Emily had suffered. She channeled her grief into advocacy, working with child protection agencies and lawmakers to strengthen safeguards and raise awareness. Emily's survival story became a powerful testimony in these efforts, a beacon illuminating the need for vigilance and compassion. As the months turned into years, the scars remained, but so did the hope. Claire and Emily continued to rebuild their lives together, resilient and determined. Their journey was far from over, but with each step forward, they honored the past while embracing the promise of the future. The ripple effects of Emily's return and the exposure of the nursing home's horrors stretched far beyond the courtroom and into the very heart of the town that had once seemed so quiet and untouched by tragedy. Slowly, the community began to awaken from decades of denial, reshaping itself through shared grief, reflection, and an earnest commitment to change. For Claire and Emily, this transformation was both a comfort and a challenge, as they witnessed the town's struggle to confront its past and redefine its future. Local leaders organized forums where residents could speak openly about the dark chapter that had been uncovered. These gatherings were raw and emotional, filled with tears, confessions, and a sometimes painful process of acknowledging the community's role in allowing such suffering to persist. People who had once been strangers found themselves united by a collective desire to make amends and ensure that no child would ever again fall through the cracks. Schools implemented new programs focusing on child safety, mental health, and community support. Parents, teachers, and students participated actively, eager to learn and prevent further harm. The memory of Emily's lost years became a somber lesson etched into the fabric of daily life, a reminder that vigilance and compassion must go hand in hand. Emily herself became a figure of quiet strength within the community. She volunteered with local organizations dedicated to helping abuse survivors and vulnerable children, using her story as a bridge to connect with others and foster healing. Though her journey was marked by pain, she refused to be defined by it alone. Instead, she sought to transform her experience into a source of empowerment for herself and for those she touched. Claire continued to advocate tirelessly, working alongside city officials and nonprofit groups to improve child protection policies. Her efforts helped to establish new oversight committees and better training for those working with children. The nursing home's exposure had been a catalyst, igniting a movement that reached far beyond the town's borders. Yet even as progress was made, old wounds sometimes surfaced. Some families struggled with guilt or anger, wrestling with feelings of helplessness or regret. The process of healing was ongoing and often nonlinear, requiring patience, understanding, and ongoing support. Claire and Emily found themselves at the center of this evolving story, symbols of loss and recovery, grief and hope. Throughout it all, the presence of Daisy remained a quiet but powerful reminder of resilience. The worn doll, once lost and then found, became an emblem of survival and enduring love. It was a small but steadfast link to the past, a tangible connection to the little girl who had disappeared so long ago and the woman she had become. The town had changed irrevocably, shaped by the shadows it had faced and the light it now sought to foster. For Claire and Emily, the journey was far from over, but the steps they took together marked a path forward, one grounded in truth, healing, and the unyielding power of a community determined to rise from its darkest moments. The day had arrived when Claire and Emily would lay Daisy to rest, a bittersweet ceremony that marked the closing of a painful chapter and the beginning of a fragile peace. The doll, once a simple toy, had become a symbol of a journey through loss, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between mother and daughter. Now, it was time to honor Daisy in a way that acknowledged both the sorrow and the hope she represented. The ceremony took place in the garden behind their home, a quiet space filled with blooming flowers and the gentle hum of summer insects. Close friends, family members, and members of the community who had stood by them through the darkest times gathered in a circle, their faces a tapestry of empathy, strength, and shared history. The air was heavy with emotion, every breath carrying the weight of memories long carried silently in their hearts. Claire held Daisy carefully, the familiar softness of the worn fabric grounding her amidst the flood of feelings. Emily stood beside her, her hand resting gently on her mother's shoulder. Neither spoke, their silence more eloquent than words, a mutual understanding passing between them. This was not just a farewell to a doll, but a tribute to the innocence lost and found, the years reclaimed, and the wounds slowly healing. As the sun dipped low, casting a golden glow across the garden, Claire began to speak. Her voice trembled at first, then steadied as she recounted the story of Daisy, how the doll had been with Emily through moments of joy and despair, a silent witness to a family torn apart and then painfully mended. She spoke of hope, forgiveness, and the power of love to endure beyond the darkest nights. One by one, those gathered shared their own reflections, stories of compassion, courage, and the strength they had witnessed in Claire and Emily. Tears flowed freely, mingled with smiles and quiet nods. The community, once fractured by fear and silence, now stood united in healing and remembrance. When the time came, Daisy was gently placed in a handcrafted wooden box, adorned with delicate carvings of flowers and stars. The box was lowered into a small grave beneath an ancient oak tree, a place chosen for its strength and enduring presence. As the earth covered the box, a hush fell over the gathering, a sacred moment of closure and new beginnings. Emily knelt and pressed a kiss to the spot, her heart full yet heavy. "Thank you, Daisy," she whispered, her voice barely audible but carrying the depth of years of unspoken gratitude. The doll, once lost and now forever at rest, had carried them through a journey none could forget. As the crowd slowly dispersed, Claire and Emily remained a moment longer, wrapped in the quiet embrace of the garden and the fading light. The road ahead remained uncertain, marked by the lingering shadows of the past. But in that place, surrounded by love and remembrance, they found a fragile peace, one that promised healing and the possibility of a future shaped not by loss, but by resilience and hope. In the quiet aftermath of Daisy's farewell, Claire and Emily found themselves navigating a landscape forever altered, not just by the passage of time, but by the profound impact of truth unearthed and memories reclaimed. The doll's final resting place beneath the old oak tree was more than a grave. It was a symbol, an anchor in the turbulent sea of their shared history. Yet even as the earth settled over that small wooden box, the echoes of Daisy's story continued to ripple through their lives and the community at large. The days that followed the ceremony brought a subtle shift in the way people spoke, moved, and remembered. Conversations once shrouded in discomfort or avoidance now carried an undertone of acknowledgement and respect. The town's newspaper ran a heartfelt feature on Emily's journey, highlighting not just the tragedy, but the resilience that had blossomed from it. Letters poured in from strangers near and far. Parents who saw in Emily's story a reflection of their own fears, survivors who found hope in her courage, and advocates who pledged to carry forward the mission of protection and healing. For Claire and Emily, these messages became a lifeline, reminders that their ordeal was part of a larger narrative about human strength and compassion. Emily, especially, felt a renewed sense of purpose. The scars of her past remained, but they no longer defined her entirely. Instead, they fueled a determination to live fully, to advocate fiercely, and to embrace the moments of joy and connection that life now offered. Yet, beneath the surface of progress, the past held its shadows. Occasionally, memories would resurface unbidden, fragments of fear, flashes of loneliness that no amount of healing could entirely erase. In those moments, Claire and Emily leaned on each other, their bond deepened by shared understanding and unwavering love. Therapy sessions continued, as did quiet walks in the garden where Daisy rested, a place that offered solace and the comfort of tangible memory. The community, too, grappled with the balance of remembrance and moving forward. Memorials were planned for other children who had disappeared or suffered abuse, ensuring their stories would not be forgotten. Schools and local agencies collaborated on educational programs designed to empower children and adults alike, creating networks of safety and awareness that promised to be more vigilant than before. Amid this evolving tapestry of grief and hope, Daisy's legacy endured. What began as a simple doll had become a catalyst for change, a reminder that even the smallest symbols can carry the weight of profound meaning. In quiet moments, Claire would find herself tracing the contours of Daisy's face in her mind, recalling the innocence that had been stolen and the fierce love that had never waned. As the seasons turned, life settled into a new rhythm. There were still challenges, moments of sorrow and uncertainty, but also triumphs and celebrations. Birthdays marked with laughter, holidays shared with family and friends, and days filled with the simple joys of being together. Emily's voice, once silenced by fear and absence, now spoke boldly in classrooms and community centers, a testament to survival and the power of storytelling. The story of the little girl who went missing in 1990 and the doll that turned up 33 years later was no longer just a tale of loss. It had transformed into a beacon of hope, resilience, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Claire and Emily's journey was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, light can be found, and that the echoes of love, like those of Daisy, can carry us through the years and beyond. As the years passed, the scars left by Emily's disappearance and the decades of silence softened, but never fully faded. Yet, From those deep wounds grew a remarkable resilience, not just in Emily and Claire, but in the entire community that had witnessed their journey. The discovery of Daisy in that unexpected place, and the truths it unlocked, had changed everything. It had shattered old fears and hidden secrets, paving a path toward healing that once seemed impossible. Now, standing on the cusp of a future shaped by both sorrow and strength, Emily and Claire embraced the promise of new beginnings. Emily, no longer defined by her past, but strengthened because of it, pursued her dreams with fierce determination. She enrolled in college, majoring in social work, driven by a desire to protect other children who might face dangers like those she had endured. Her voice, once silenced by fear and uncertainty, became a powerful force in advocacy circles, where she spoke with honesty and courage. Each story she shared was a thread in the tapestry of hope she helped to weave, a testament to the enduring spirit of those who refuse to be broken. Claire, her heart still tender from years of anguish, found peace in watching her daughter blossom. She dedicated herself to community outreach, joining boards and councils to influence policies that prioritize child welfare and victim support. Her tireless work ensured that the lessons learned from Emily's ordeal translated into real change. Stricter safeguards in care facilities, improved training for caregivers, and stronger community networks that could intervene before tragedy struck. Together, they became pillars of strength and beacons of hope, their bond unshakable despite all that had been lost and found. The memories of those early years, the frantic searches, the unanswered questions, the heartache, remained part of their story, but they no longer defined their identity. Instead, they honored those memories by living fully, by helping others, and by nurturing a legacy of resilience and love. The town, too, had transformed. Where once there had been silence and shadows, now there was conversation and action. Memorials stood in public spaces, commemorating not only Emily, but all children whose lives had been marked by hardship or loss. Educational programs flourished, teaching generations about the importance of vigilance, kindness, and community responsibility. The story of the little girl who vanished in 1990 and the doll that resurfaced decades later became a chapter in the town's collective memory, a reminder that darkness can be overcome by the steadfast light of hope. On quiet evenings, Claire and Emily would sometimes walk together to the garden where Daisy rested beneath the ancient oak. They would sit side by side, feeling the breeze whisper through the leaves and the soft earth beneath their feet. In those moments, words were unnecessary. The bond they shared spoke volumes, a testament to a journey that had been marked by pain, but also by extraordinary courage and love. Life, with all its unpredictability, had given them a second chance. The future was no longer shadowed by loss, but illuminated by the choices they made each day to live with purpose, compassion, and hope. Emily's story, once a heartbreaking mystery, had become a powerful narrative of survival and renewal, proof that even the darkest chapters can give way to new beginnings. As they faced each new dawn, Claire and Emily carried with them the enduring truth that love, resilience, and the strength to forgive are the forces that can heal even the deepest wounds. The memory of Daisy, their favorite doll, remained forever etched in their hearts, not just as a symbol of a lost childhood, but as a beacon lighting the way forward, a reminder that the past, no matter how painful, need not dictate the future. Thank you so much for joining me on this heartfelt journey today. Stories like Emily's remind us of the incredible strength of the human spirit and the power of hope, even in the darkest times. If this story touched you, inspired you, or brought back your own memories, I'd love to hear from you. Please don't hesitate to share your thoughts or personal stories in the comments below. Your voice matters and helps us all connect. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more stories that move the heart and open the mind. Your support means the world and encourages me to keep sharing meaningful tales with you. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and remember, every story has the power to change a life.